Good afternoon and welcome to Senator Andy Kim's Town Hall. Before I get to the Senator, I wanted to let you know that if you're listening in on the phone, you can press *3 on your keypad at any time during the Town Hall, and you'll be put into a queue to ask a question. If you're listening in online, thank you and welcome, and you can type your question into the bar below the player that you see in front of you. For a moment, I'd like to introduce my colleague Laura to just say a few words as well. Laura?
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Laura y voy a estar en línea por si tienen alguna pregunta que les gustaría preguntar en español. Tenemos traducción disponible. Cualquier pregunta pueden escribirla en el texto en nuestra página kim.senate.gov/live. Le voy a regresar la palabra a mi colega Forrest. Gracias.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all again for joining us this evening. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Senator Andy Kim.
Yeah, thanks, Forrest. Hi, everyone. This is Andy Kim. Thanks for joining the telephone town hall. For those who might be joining for the very first time, I try to do these as frequently as I can to try to make sure people across the entire state are able to get a sense of what's happening in D.C., where I'm putting some of my focus, and for me to also hear what's on your mind. I honestly love doing these because it's important that we can just kind of cut through the noise and just have a chance to be able to talk amongst ourselves about some of the biggest issues that are out there. This is something I did when I was in the House of Representatives a lot, but now when I'm in a state of over 9 million people across the entire state, it's all the more important to be able to do this and do it in an accessible way where we can make sure that many of you can get connected in. So what I'll just say is if you want to ask a question, you can press *3 now to get in line. And if you want to join an email newsletter to kind of keep up with the work that I'm doing and be notified about future events and town halls, you can press *6 to sign up in that way. But look, I really am grateful that you joined up because there's a lot that's happening right now. And I guess I just want to just jump straight to the biggest conversation which is happening right now, which is about what happens next with government funding. Because it's certainly been something that's dominated our work down at the Capitol, and I know it's on the minds of a lot of people. I want to just start with some of the basics in terms of just the role that we play here in Congress. We have a process here, a process that's bipartisan, set up by our founders to make sure that the parties work together to try to find compromise, to try to identify how best to be able to fund our government. And this is not always worked, but we've had efforts over the last few years to try to build towards this. And actually last December, we actually had a bipartisan deal. We had something that was going to at least be able to move forward with what's called a continuing resolution, but in a bipartisan way that was going to fund the government going forward while we worked on the appropriations to be able to actually get agreement in that way. And, I know it's not ideal, but, I think the ability to be able to use that process and to engage in that bipartisanship is something I think a lot of people will agree upon. That deal was struck down by Elon Musk and Donald Trump even before Trump came into office. They put pressure on the Speaker, Mike Johnson, to just kick the can down the road. And that end of the road ends tomorrow. Tomorrow is the deadline for us to pass a budget or a continuing resolution to keep the government open. We need to do this because Democrats and Republicans, we were very close to actually getting a fuller deal on a budget. The teams negotiating were very, very close, and then all of a sudden, Speaker Johnson just last week decided to go a different route and just go it alone, which is something that we are now finding ourselves in a crisis because of this, something that a lot of my Republican colleagues in the Senate are very opposed to this approach that is happening. But because it has the blessing of Donald Trump and Elon Musk, it's something that the House of Representatives move forward with, and the Senate Republicans, despite their objections, are continuing to support. And, what we've seen right now is that this push that they're doing forward, they call it a continuing resolution, but it's really not. This is something that is adding billions of dollars for defense spending at the expense of billions of dollars towards healthcare and so many other issues. So, for instance, this is a proposal by the Republicans that would cut billions of dollars in programs like Head Start and community health centers. And this is something that is incredibly important for New Jersey. It would impact over 10,000 kids in terms of impact of Head Start. There are 24 community health centers in New Jersey. I just visited one just the other week to try to understand the challenges that are being put before us, not just with this government funding crisis, but also when it comes to the attacks upon Medicaid that the Republicans are also lining up for. So, I just wanted to give a little bit of a context about what brings us to this moment right now, because I'll be honest with you, what the Speaker has done, what Speaker Johnson has done, has really put our country in a no-win situation, a real lose-lose situation here. And I, for one, really believe that we have to stand up and not allow this type of lawlessness to continue, especially what we see with regards to, the Elon Musk and how he's been proceeding. But also, again, Speaker Johnson's break from our approach on the budget. If he's getting away with it this time, he's going to continue to try this going forward. So instead of working to pass that bipartisan budget, we see them holding, frankly, our government and the American people hostage with this deadline approaching tomorrow and trying to pass a very hyper-partisan bill without engaging any sort of bipartisan talks and trying to just force it through. It's something that when you look at the approach that's been taken, it's something that's going to, as I said, cut funding when it comes to our kids and our health care, and it's something that's going to do really lasting damage on a number of different fronts. And we see this on top of what is already happening. When you look at this, we already saw just the other day an effort to slash the Department of Education staff in half. And we see what happened with USAID. I mean, they're already effectively shutting down the government. And, that's something that is right in front of us, and they say it out loud. And so, for me, my vote when it comes to this continuing resolution, when it comes to proceeding in the Senate, is a vote of no. I cannot vote for this approach. I do not think that it should proceed, and I think we should be pushing forward on a 30-day extension and allow the negotiators to actually finish the bipartisan deal that has continued. Now, I'll be honest with you, there are differing opinions in terms of, the main areas is thinking through what is the approach that gives Trump the most amount of ability to do damage to the American people, to our government, what gives him the most amount of power. And that's something that I've been grappling with as well as I've been coming to this decision in terms of my own vote. Yes, if there is a shutdown, which is first of all something I would never want. I worked as a civil servant in the executive branch for a number of years. I worked through multiple government shutdowns, including ones where I was brought into work without getting a paycheck, uncertain if and when I would ever get paid again for that work that I did during the shutdown. And so, I take this very personally. It's something that does an enormous amount of damage. And so I was trying to weigh this through. And so the idea is, if a shutdown actually were to occur because Speaker Johnson pulled himself out of the bipartisan negotiations and balked at that, what would actually happen? And I think there are some legitimate concerns there. I think one that was very resonant for me as I was thinking through this was about the judiciary, for instance. The judiciary is where a lot of the big fights are happening right now in challenging the Trump administration. Right now, actually, we just saw just a couple hours ago a big ruling at a federal court that is now saying that the Trump administration has to bring back, thousands of employees that they had fired because these employees were under a probationary status. And that is not just new hires. That was also, experienced, talented, promoted employees that were in a probationary status. And so, that's an example of a win through the judiciary that needs to continue on. But if there's a shutdown, the courts can only really stay open for a couple of weeks. And if it's protracted, could very well run into deeper problems in terms of their ability to proceed with the business before them. And also what we see is that, for instance, OMB, Office of Management and Budget, would be able to be in charge to direct where the funds that they do have go and which people are stay employed and stay working. And so the idea that Russell Vought, who's the main person and the mastermind, frankly, of the Project 2025 effort, would be able to handpick and choose which employees are essential and not essential, that is something that puts an enormous amount of power into the hands of some of the most nefarious members of the Trump administration, and their ability to do a lot of lasting damage in that way. So, we see this very much. I mean, this is very much, as I said, a no-win situation, really, a lose-lose situation in which, these are put before us. So I just wanted to lay that out for you to just give you an understanding of how I've been trying to grapple with this decision. I've met with many different groups across New Jersey, trying to hear and understand the impacts that would happen, both by just the current trajectory of the Trump administration, as well as the challenges that would happen during a potential shutdown. And as I said, for me, after weighing that, I believe that this approach that the Republicans are taking going forward with their so-called continuing resolution is not the way to go. I don't support that vote. I don't support providing a Senate cloture vote for their bill, and I think we need to take action to do so. And we're trying to see what last steps there are, but as I said, there's disagreement in terms of the way forward, and we're trying to figure out how best to be able to proceed here, given just the terrible circumstances that the Republicans put us forward in. Now, I get it that people are very, very frustrated, as am I, and you want to see change. The people look at what's happening and they're thinking this is not working for them. And I, agree wholeheartedly. And frankly, it isn't just about the government employees that are being fired or seeing just how this administration is engaged in just acts of retribution and revenge against people who hold different political ideas or people that have opposed them. And, we'll get into that a little bit later. But, I mean, look, we see this effort right now to have all these tariffs come up right now that are really getting at the heart of things that people were hoping the government would actually take on, which is that, they wanted a government that was going to try to address the cost of living, trying to lower the costs that have gotten too high. And then now what do we see? We see a president that is not engaged on those issues and instead taking a lot of actions that are actually going to exacerbate this and make it all the more difficult to be able to handle. And, I think that that's something I wanted to raise because it's honestly still the top thing that I hear about from people in New Jersey is just, look, the prices are continuing to skyrocket. Why is the president going around and threatening or actually placing into place these tariffs on not only our adversaries and competitors like China, where I think there is a greater agreement that actions could be taken there, but against some of our strongest allies and our partners, including our neighboring nations, Mexico and Canada, and really antagonizing these relations and, again, affecting so many of the costs going forward. So I actually asked a professor to come on and be able to give us some deeper understanding about how these tariffs are going to impact jobs and prices here in New Jersey. So Arturo, if you don't mind, he's a professor at Rutgers Business School. I wanted him to jump on to just give you a little bit more of a sense of this. So Arturo, if you don't mind, just jump on for a couple minutes here, give us a little rundown, and we can just start to open it up for conversation after that.
Yes, Senator, thank you so much. This is a big picture analysis. I'm focusing mostly on the area of China, Mexico, and Canada. I'm going to be speaking on how these impact the small businesses and also how these may impact the final consumer, people, households, and the sort. So, big picture, tariffs have a speculative impact, and they have a short, medium, and large-term impact. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about this. And I'm going to be talking about the three main industry sectors that they are most likely to have a direct repercussion on our everyday lives. These are the automotive. Everybody moves from point A to point B. Second, food. We eat a couple of times a day. And lastly, construction. We need to have homes, building, offices. So in that perspective, when we think in terms of tariffs to Mexico, there is a big impact to middle low-income communities because the preferred vehicles of these communities are brands such as Chevrolet, Nissan, and Ford, who come from Mexico, that will have a 25% increase on new vehicles. When we're thinking cars are becoming too expensive, let's repair our cars, then we need to think that the spare parts to do those repairs, brake pads, tires, engine components, they also come from Mexico. So we are going to be coming to a place where households may need to be making trade-off decisions and will not only be about repairing the car, but having that tough decision that will imply safety on the roads. We may see a decrease on maintenance in vehicles, so there will be cars with less maintenance transiting the spaces, and people will be less likely to buy new cars. So we will see cars that they are more likely to fail on that aspect. So that is when we think in cars and Mexico. We can also be thinking in cars and Canada. That will be part of the impact, but there will be a lower impact because that space is exporting middle to higher end vehicles, and we're looking at engine transmissions. So small repairs, middle low income households, impact by Mexico, middle upper income households, impact by Canada. When we think in terms of China and automotive, there are two parts of the problem. One is the electronics of the vehicles. New vehicles have a lot of electronic parts from ignition systems, controlling, and the sort, so they come in impacted by the price on China. And then we have the other side of it. If you are a person who wants to start a new business, the components that you will buy to make the diagnostic of the cars, those that you will plug to the dashboards to know what to do next, most of them come from China, so they will increase the price of those who want to start a new business in the area of automotive. So those will be in medium to long-term impact because they are related to inventories, but they will have an immediate impact on safety and quality of life because we will reduce the safety of the vehicles on the roads. When we are looking into food, grocery stores, they have a speculative impact and a short-term impact. A speculative impact, if there's an announcement of tariffs in the morning, the person who has a grocery store needs to be mindful that prices for the next round of food that they buy will go up on the next order. So they will place an increase in prices even before the tariffs are being confirmed because they need to make sure they have enough money to buy the next round of produce for the shelf. So short-term produce that they have fast cycles will be immediately impacted in terms of a speculative impact and shorter impact. Food that they come pre-packed and prepared, they are mostly from Canada, like cereal, they will have a medium-term speculative, they will have a medium-term impact. When we go into restaurants, we're thinking into the prices of the menus, food that people buy every day, so they have a speculative impact and a short-term impact. When we look into a bigger picture, if you are opening a new restaurant, you will need to buy supplies, fridge, equipment, utensils. A good proportion of them are coming from China. So people who may want to open new businesses in the food industry may see up to a 10 to 25% increase on the prices just because the original investment to get that going goes up. Finally, when we talk about the construction industry, we have a one-two punch. Higher prices in lumber, higher prices in aluminum, steel, they will reduce the demand for new housing. So there will be less houses around. That will impact the labor. People who work in the construction industry will be less likely to find jobs, and they will have a lower number of houses and office space and the sort. The second part of the problem is related to quality of life. So if you want to do maintenance in your house, change the roof of your house, change the window of your house, then that will be more expensive and you may even need to delay the transaction just because of the price. So now we have a direct impact on quality of life because maintenance of properties will be decreased, and we'll have also an impact on households' investments. Your house is your investment. You don't maintain the house, the value of your property goes down, your investment goes down. And that will be an impact in the 3 to 6 months because that's how long it will take to change the inventories and to impact. And that is the big picture analysis, Senator.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I think one thing that it's just important to lift up here is that, you're saying that even before, like right now, there are some tariffs that have already moved forward, especially on Canada, on Mexico, and the administration is looking at global tariffs that they're going to make a decision about at the beginning of April. But what you're saying is even if things are speculative, even just the news about these tariffs, that this is already something that's increasing prices because these businesses are already starting to think through what increased costs they're going to have to carry, and that is now hurting the customer and the consumer as well. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator. We are looking at that will have a speculative impact as soon as the discussion comes because a business owner wants to make sure that they can replenish inventory. And the second part of it is that if a tariff is put in place, even after it has been removed, the consumer will continue to pay the price until the new inventory is replaced. So they have the impact is longer than the life of the tariff.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. And why don't you stick around in case people have some additional questions on tariffs. But I appreciate it, Professor, for jumping on and giving us these thoughts and sharing your expertise with us. Thank you. I just want to touch one last thing before we open it up for questions. I'll be quick on this front, but I just want to preview sort of down the road and just the next big fights that are out there. So, what I would say is when the president had his joint address the other week, I brought as my guest a gentleman named Kevin Nunez. He is somebody that suffers from cerebral palsy and uses a wheelchair. And why I asked him to come is because he is dependent upon Medicaid for his health care, for expenses with regards to his caregivers, and also when it comes to modifications in his home that he needed to be able to live there, given just the kinds of equipment and care that he needs. And I wanted to bring him because right now there is a movement forward that the House of Representatives took, again, Speaker Johnson took, that is paving the path towards massive cuts. And by massive, I mean upwards of $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid. And I just wanted to just get ahead of this and make sure that you're paying attention to this and understand this. The Republicans have been labeling this. Speaker Johnson keeps saying that, this is about trying for efficiency and getting rid of waste, and also just he's saying it's also about targeting people who are lazy and choosing not to work and are leeching off our government, taking handouts, and it's not true. Of course, there are ways in which we can make government more effective and efficient, and I'm all for that. And I'm all for trying to find places to get rid of waste. We see that in the government. We see that in private companies as well. And yes, we should be taking that on. But when it comes to Medicaid, we cannot cast that type of umbrella across it all and cause such disdain for it. This is what we're talking about. For instance, in our state of 9 million people, there are 2 million people that use Medicaid for their health care. 1 in 3 kids, 1 out of every 3 kids in New Jersey gets health care through Medicaid. So many people in the disability community use Medicaid for so much of what it takes for them to be able to live a life of dignity and decency. With our seniors that are in long-term care, nursing homes, a lot of them use Medicaid to be able to afford it. And so I just wanted to just add some context to this, because you're going to start hearing a lot more about this as we move forward and the Republicans put together this, quote, reconciliation bill proposal. And I think it's really important that we show what it is that Medicaid is, and then just the other side of the equation, which is why are these cuts being made to Medicaid? It's not about making our government more fiscally responsible, and that's not what DOGE is about. It's that whatever money they are trying to pull aside from these cuts, they are going to put directly into a tax cut proposal that's going to overwhelmingly benefit billionaires and multimillionaires, not the middle class, not others that are struggling right now. And I just wanted to just draw that dark line between those types of actions, so you have a sense of what this is about. We're talking about efforts for trillions of dollars in tax cuts, again, towards billionaires that are building rocket ships to outer space, not to the families that are struggling, where people are working 2-3 jobs just to try to stay afloat. And that's, I just think, the type of prioritization that is really against so much of what people were telling me is worrisome right now, when we live in the time of the greatest amount of inequality in our nation's history. So with that, I have lots more I can go into, and please, you can ask questions and ask any issues that you want. Again, if you want to get in line, *3. If you want to sign up for our email newsletter, *6. But Forrest, why don't we just start out and start going through the questions, and I'll try to get through as many of them as possible.
Great. Thank you, Senator. The first one comes from a phone. It's Sarah from Montclair. Sarah, you should be live with Senator Kim.
First of all, thank
Hi,
you so much for. Hi, thank you so much for having this call. I came unbidden on my phone. I was so delighted to receive it, and for voting no. Saying you'll vote no on closure. I really appreciate that so much. I guess I'm trying to understand the strategy with the Democrats. I'm really worried about what this vote's going to do to the party, because Senator Schumer went on the floor last night and said that the CR didn't have the votes. I think a lot of people, even people very plugged in following the debate, thought that meant that the Democrats were united. He said they were united against the CR. And yet it seems like now, in fact, I've just seen on the news that he said he is going to vote, he is going to allow cloture. And so actually, this is sort of a semantic game where the CR could in fact pass. And I just think I think Democrats in the party are just baffled by this behavior, and that it's doing real damage to the party. People are just infuriated. They feel had and like they're being taken for fools, that we don't realize what's going on. So I wonder if you can help me understand your colleagues, because I really appreciate your vote, but I don't understand why there's any chance that the CR will pass.
Yeah. So thank you, Sarah, for this. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of people share your concerns, and I've been hearing it not just over the last couple weeks, but just the last couple hours. And I've been in a lot of hours of meetings with my colleagues over the last couple days, and look, each of them is making this decision, and as I kind of was getting to in the opening, really trying to weigh this. The main thing that keeps coming up is weighing this sense of just look, Speaker Johnson, Trump, they put us in this real no-win situation as a country, not just as a party, but for America right now, where you see this approach right now where Trump is already shutting down the government and taking these steps of lawlessness on so many different levels. And then with the shutdown potential, the question is that something that's going to make Trump even stronger in terms of his ability to dismantle the government, in terms of his ability to, again, have, the judiciary, run out of funds to be able to continue their work, to be able to handpick, what employees are showing up and who not, and just being able to get rid of a lot and fire a lot of employees if this goes on for a protracted period of time. And just the concerns in terms of what is, if a government shutdown were to happen, how do we envision what would potentially bring an agreement to bring it back open? So, those were, a lot of the questions that we're being grappled with. But I think there is a lot of fundamental understanding from my end of just exactly how you're feeling. Like for me, I think it's important to just stand up and say, look, like this action this isn't right. And if we reward it, it will likely continue to happen. And we see the slippery slope that is being provided right here. And, when you see someone like Trump who's taken on these types of power control grabs and authoritarian tendencies that we've seen unfold in terms of his abuses of power, I think that there needs to be a direct confrontation that goes. But, I think this is something that, for me, this is my first time being in government when the Republicans hold that White House, the House, and the Senate. And not having a gavel, not having the ability to control that chamber of Congress is just incredibly difficult in terms of it. So it's a tough position to be in. For me, I came to the conclusion that I was in, that I told you about today, and I've done my best to try to articulate and make the case. So I think right now I'm just continuing to think through like what comes next, how are we taking on these next fights, and and I'm not going to get into the politics here, but how do we put ourselves in a place where we can be able to get a gavel and be able to have restoration of the checks and balances. And I say that as someone who stepped up to run for office in 2018 to try to address a situation that is very reminiscent of now. So, but thank you, Sarah, for your focus on this, and just, please continue to pay attention, continue to stand up, and with these setbacks that we, continue to see, also take into consideration some of what's happening out there. For instance, like the litigation and the legal efforts, that is something where we've been able to see some gains, and that's why a lot of the efforts to try to stop this administration are going through the judiciary, as we see Speaker Johnson and Majority Leader Thune and abdicating their Article 1 responsibilities. But just today, as we said, we saw the federal court move forward on requiring the Trump administration to rehire tens of thousands of employees. We saw our own attorney general working with other states' attorney generals to fight back against the president's executive order outlawing birthright citizenship. That's going up to the Supreme Court. We see another effort where where unions like AFL-CIO are suing the Office of Personnel Management, about some of the different actions that are happening there. So we are trying to take multiple different steps to be able to fight back. And, those are the types of things that are going to happen. I'll just say one last thing. Like, when we think through 2017, when the last time that the Republicans had the White House, the House, and the Senate, there was an effort to try to gut the Affordable Care Act. And that's, what mobilized me at a very intense level and so many other people. And there was just a lot of noise, a lot of pressure put upon the Republicans as they were going through that process. And we saw, whether it was at town halls and elsewhere, the just broader public furious about these types of actions and paying attention to it and going after, the people that were trying to promote that. And that public outcry created space for Senator McCain and others on the Republican side to oppose these efforts. And, and the Affordable Care Act legislation failed. And so, I still believe we can save Medicaid. I still believe we can stop some of the damage. We're not going to be able to stop it all, and that is a painful realization. But that's why we need to take every step that we can to use litigation, use mobilization, use the legislation and other tools that we have to mobilize. So, thanks, Sarah. Please keep at it. Continue on despite these setbacks, as I am as well, continuing on to try to think about what it is that we can do, because it's necessary. It's not something that's optional. We can't just stand down. I would not be able to go back to my kids at night and look them in the eye if I didn't feel like I was doing everything that I can to be able to try to provide the future for them that they deserve. So thanks again for that question.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Moving on to question 2. This comes from online. The question is, thank you for your ongoing leadership in defending foreign assistance. As an activist with the One campaign, I'm especially concerned about the impacts of the foreign aid freeze and the widespread termination of assistance without congressional consent. Can you just address that really quick?
Yeah, I will. I'll be kind of brief on this one because I feel like it kind of gets to some of what I was saying in the past one, which is, my very first job working in government was at USAID about 21 years ago. I started as an intern and then got a paid job there. And I did it because I really believe in a foreign policy that understands 3 major pillars, which is defense, diplomacy, and development. And this is something that's not just me, even Republicans like Ronald Reagan thought that development and foreign aid were a critical part of our foreign policy, which is why USAID is actually housed in the Ronald Reagan building. Well, that is until a couple weeks ago when this administration closed down the offices at the Ronald Reagan building. So I just wanted to frame it that way because I think so often foreign aid is seen as like charity. It's not. It's not charity. This is not just like out of altruism that we're giving. This is about our own economic security. It's about building relations to other countries so we can open up economic trade and markets and be able to benefit American businesses. A lot of the food aid that is provided abroad is coming directly from farms in the United States and able to help support our economy in a lot of different ways. And, we saw a cut. A cut is actually an understatement. We saw a gutting of foreign aid where Rubio announced 83% of aid programs at USAID have now been canceled. And they even tried to cancel paying the programs that were already completed. So just, not paying our bills. And so, thankfully a court stopped that and is requiring the administration to actually pay its bills. So again, the legal side is winning some victories, and I think that's an important step to continue to realize. I think in the first Trump administration, I think it was like something to the effect of like their administration lost, I think it was about 80% at least of their cases. So pushing on that is certainly a place to go. This is something that I am saddened to see, and it's not just about foreign assistance. There's efforts now underway to try to gut the State Department, try to gut, a lot of the different tools that we have for our global leadership. And frankly, again, that's just going to make us weaker. We already see China coming in and saying that they're going to take up some of the programs that we're now abandoning in countries around Asia and the rest of the world. And these are the types of things that are just making Vladimir Putin and other authoritarian leaders around the world incredibly happy right now, because they're seeing a real withdrawal from America, an abdication of that global leadership, and that's just something that feeds right into their abilities to step up and fill those gaps. So, Barbara, thank you for that question. Hope it gives you a sense of how I feel about it, but know that, especially given my experience in foreign policy, this is a place I'm trying to engage significantly in to try to help preserve American global leadership. Next question.
Great. Senator, the next question is coming to you on the phone from Elizabeth in Palisades Park. Elizabeth, you are on with Senator Kim.
Thank you for calling me and allowing me to be a part of this. I've been trying to find out where they were going to have town hall meetings. My question is, I have an elderly mother that I take care of. I had to leave my job. She's on all kinds of assistance. If something should happen, where do we turn? What is going to, transpire? We all going to be out in the street? Is there a way that, the Republicans and the Democrats are going to, realize the chaos that's going to happen? That's basically my question. It might be simple, but that's my question.
Just for my knowledge here, thank you. First of all, thank you for the question. But you said you have an elderly mother. How is her health? Is she living on her own, or is she with you, or somewhere else?
I moved in with her. I had to give up my life to take care of her. She had fell in 2016 and had a subacute hematoma. She is diabetic. She has seizures. She's a fall risk. She just a couple of months ago during the summer broke 4 ribs because she fell. I keep her in bubble wrap to keep her out of and I had just finished school. It was always my dream to get a degree. I got a degree and I can't even utilize it because I have to take care of my mom. I was working 4 hours, and now that job is no longer. So now it's, really struggling on my mother's Social Security and her housing, and it's like I was going to go into that thing where Medicaid will pay for me to take care of my mother.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to happen because, all of these cuts. So, and then on top of that, I have student loans that I have no idea, and I'm nearly 60 years old. So it's like I feel a noose around my neck.
Yeah. You got a lot going on, and I'm sorry for the anxiety that you feel. And I've had a lot of people describe challenges. They just feel like it's hard to breathe sometimes just because you take it all in. And another person they said something to me that just kind of stuck with me, talking about all these problems. It feels like death from 1,000 cuts. And my father had a bad fall last spring, and he was already a polio survivor, had a disability, had a hard time walking, and he's just never going to walk in any real way. And not only that, but a lot of other challenges with just decline writ large for him, and and it's just kind of thrown us into complete turmoil as a family. And it's unbelievably expensive to get the care that we need for him. A huge part of my salary is really just going to paying his medical bills, and I don't know what comes next, as things are going to get worse and worse as time goes on. So what I'll say is, like, you're not alone. My family and others, and my case is not nearly as bad as others, and it's sad. Like, I remember it was like this realization when we were going through this with my father that we basically have this situation in this country as you get older that you either have to end up paying like $10,000 a month for either a long-term care center or assisted living or a caregiver to come to your home, or you have to basically like bankrupt my dad until he's eligible for Medicaid. And it's just like, it's so sad that in the richest, most powerful country in the world that these are basically the options for elderly in this country as they have problems, and it affects their families, as you said. So I'm really I'm really feeling for you. If there's anything that we can do, and we could try to follow up with you and see if we might be able to help navigate some of these questions about Medicaid and caregiver type work. So if that's useful, I can have my team reach out, Elizabeth. But you know what? First and foremost is we need to make sure we're preserving Medicaid. Medicaid in New Jersey cannot survive if the federal government backs away from its share and what it is that is going to be needed. In fact, not only has this just been not enough on Medicaid, a lot of what we need is to be able to move resources so that Medicare can actually be able to provide long-term care capabilities, be able to support caregivers and other types of support that is just needed more broadly in this country. That's something I support and am pushing for. And I am on the healthcare committee in the Senate, as well as a committee on aging, specifically focused on addressing the concerns of seniors and this problem and crisis that we have when it comes to their care. So I'm really trying to put myself in a place to try to address this, needing to make sure we're preserving Social Security. And I don't care what Elon Musk says in terms of saying it's a Ponzi scheme. It is something that has dramatically decreased poverty amongst the elderly in America over the decades. It is not an entitlement. It is earned benefits from people working and contributing over the course of their lifetime. And there are some real steps that we can take to be able to preserve that, like requiring people like Elon Musk to actually pay their fair share in terms of the percentage, and not just capping it out, at where it is now, and be able to lift that cap and allowing for those who are making a lot more to be able to contribute more, to be able to help stabilize this. Those are the types of steps that we can try to do to put this in a better place. But in the meantime, as we move towards that, Elizabeth and on others that are struggling right now, please don't hesitate to reach out now to my office if there are things that we might be able to do to help. There are also other resources and services out there to help families navigate some of these types of challenges, not just at the federal level, but within our own state. And these are things that we want to make sure people know about and can try to turn to get, whether it's, financial advice and support and planning, addressing some of the student loan challenges you have. These are some of the things that hopefully we can put forward. So thank you for that. Forrest, we can hopefully kind of get through a couple more questions here.
Sure, Senator. The next one comes from Vito online, who has a couple of questions about Mahmoud Khalil. The first question is, and it's in three parts, what is the Senator's position on the illegal arrest and threatened deportation? Number two is, how will the Senator announce his opposition to this? And three, how will you organize your fellow senators to file legislation against this?
Yeah, thanks. For those that may not know, this person, Mahmoud Khalil, he's a permanent resident in the United States and married to an American citizen. His wife is pregnant. They were expecting their first child, and he was detained, basically arrested from, I believe it was his home, and is currently held in detention in Louisiana to be deported. A judge blocked that deportation, and the big effort right now through litigation to try to stop it. The reason why given by the Trump administration was because Khalil was an organizer of some of the protests that happened at Columbia University last year. And so they use that sort of guise of countering anti-Semitism as this reason to push forward. And look, what I'll say is, even if you disagree vehemently with what Khalil, what his beliefs were, his political beliefs were, to take this kind of step, what you're seeing here is a president that is so comfortable just seeking political retribution against people that have differing opinions, or people that resist or have dissent to the president's actions. We see this with Khalil. We see this with the Department of Justice. I mean, how many officials there have we seen fired because of they've taken different roles or refused to take on certain orders that they found to be illegal or not the right way to be able to proceed, and then all of a sudden they're dismissed. I mean, this is someone who, is showing that he's a president that demands complete, not just loyalty, but fealty right now, and is just very comfortable, taking these steps to do that. I mean, that's wrong. It's wrong to push forward and try to arrest and deport a permanent resident for political beliefs. And look, yes, there is a real concern about anti-Semitism that we could take on in real, tangible ways, like addressing legislation like the Countering Anti-Semitism Act, or a lot of the things that I've been working on to address nonprofit security grant programs that support protection of religious institutions, synagogues, temples, mosques, churches, others. But those aren't the things that are being moved forward on. Instead, it's about this effort to just go after people. And it's not just about them. It's about trying to send a message to others in an effort to try to silence them, when it comes to political dissent and opposing viewpoints. And that's just not in line with this country. And again, we see it not just in politics, we see it in the private sector. Trump has gone after very specific companies and law firms and trying to, hurt their business. And I talked to some business leaders talking about how there's this huge chilling effect right now in the business community not to speak out and to keep their heads down. And just, again, that's not America. That's not the kind of environment of free speech, free expression that we should have. It feels a lot more like some of the authoritarian nations that I had worked in the past when I worked in foreign policy. And so again, I say this as even for people that have differing political views, different stances, I hope we can understand the heart of these challenges and how this is actually going to make things it's going to inflame tensions even more in this nation going on. Boris, why don't we see if there's another question or two we can get in before. I want to be mindful of people's times. I know it's dinner time-ish, and I want to let people get going, but if we can maybe try one more or so.
Great. This next one comes from online as well, from Desiree. Desiree is asking, as regular citizens, what can we do to stay involved and to prevent the dismantling of our democracy by the Trump administration?
Yeah, look, I feel like I hit at this a couple ways, but I think the main thing is just continue to stay informed. I hope that this town hall is useful to have you hear from me about what's happening right now, as I'm literally at the Capitol right now, as we just finished some votes. And I'll just say, even regardless where you're at on the political spectrum, we try to stay informed, try to stay engaged. And I guess there's going to be people on this phone you don't agree with some, or frankly a lot of what I've just said, but I'm glad that you listened in, and hopefully it gives you a sense of some of these perspectives that are out there. And I try to find ways to be able to engage in ways that doesn't just further tribalize our country, that we try to anchor ourselves. I mean, like, we're about to celebrate our 250th anniversary of our nation next year. Like, 250 years, that's a big deal. And like I hope that we can make it an experience where we can really try to reflect on where we're at as a nation, reflect on the values of which our country started, and really try to build off of that. Because I really feel like we are losing touch with this idea that we're part of something bigger than all of us. That we're losing touch with this idea of what it means to be an American. It feels like our political party allegiance is first and foremost our identity. I mean, I even see families breaking apart. I've got friendships that have broken apart because of my my involvement in politics, and that's sad, really sad. I worked in government before, but I was a nonpartisan civil servant. I worked under the Bush administration. Actually, it was at USAID where I worked under the Bush administration. Worked under the Obama administration, but it was as a government employee, serving the country, not a party. And so I'll just say, please stay engaged, stay informed, and please reach out to your own community. Help them, pay attention to some of these issues, especially when it comes around some of these hot button issues like the fight for Medicaid, the tax cuts that are going forward, helping people understand and the challenges right now families are facing when it comes to high prices and costs that continue to go up. And, I think that's important. And the other thing I'll just say is please, try to find others that are engaged as well. Because I often, I keep saying this line, I believe the opposite of democracy is apathy. So then people are like, okay, well, how do you avoid apathy? Like, how do you avoid that sense of helplessness? And I say the best way to do it is to try to find people that you can team up with, people that can create a community, because it's about how do you sustain this? Because, I'll be honest with you, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. It's been, years in which I feel like I've been running at just full tilt, when it comes to addressing all the challenges that we face and trying to stay on top of it. I know a lot of people are feeling burnt out, feeling exhausted right now. And look, that's natural. And it, people need to take a little bit of time, really look out for yourself. That's important. But if you think about also how do you sustain it going forward, it's about finding people to do this alongside and people that can look out for you, people you can talk to about this. And look, in New Jersey, again, this isn't a political issue, but right now, the issues relating to, voter registration is a big deal. And just, who's getting engaged, who's not. We are losing so much of our local and regional and state media and journalism, which is why, again, I'm trying to do more town halls and other things to get the word out. There's, a lot of gaps that need to be filled in terms of shining a light. And frankly, it's not just at the federal level, it's at the state and the local level. We have a governor's race in our state. That's going to be, one of the two governor races of this year is going to be looked at by people across this country in terms of what direction our country is going and how much energy and what issues are being raised. That's an important place right now to get engaged in a place when very few states have any types of elections this year. That's something that's going to be very tangible for people in New Jersey to get engaged with. And look, that's important too, because whoever's the next governor, that's going to have a big impact in terms of how our state engages with the federal level, with the Trump administration, and whatever comes next after that. And so, I hope people think through these different efforts and try to stay engaged. But I'm just, I'll close out here because, again, I want to be mindful of your time. But, thank you for joining. I hope it was helpful to hear how I've been approaching things. Again, I know not everyone's going to agree, but, I really do truly mean this when I say, you're my boss. I got over 9 million bosses, and whether you voted for me or not, you're my boss. So it's not just those that voted for me. I am trying to serve everybody. And we got offices up and running across New Jersey. You can go to kim.senate.gov and look, and if there are issues that are needed, whether it's problems with Social Security. We do a lot with veterans. If you got passport challenges, others, we can be of help. I know the legislation so often gets the headlines, but it's just the constituent work that we really pride ourselves on. And so just, we're going to continue to just kind of grind it out. I'm stuck down here at the Capitol a lot right now, which is so much going on. But you're welcome to reach out to my office, reach out to us, pass along your thoughts, your questions, your concerns, and seek our help if there's anything we can do. So with that, I'll let you all get back to your nights. But thanks so much, and wishing you all the best. Best to your families. Take care.